We're here with Marc Ensign. Marc shared the stage with the likes of Gary Vaynerchuk, Brené Brown, Simon Sinek, Chelsea Clinton, and many more. His writing has been featured in Forbes, the Huffington Post, CNN, the New York Post, and many other publications. And his theories on marketing, leadership, and personal branding are currently being taught to people around the world.
Real life.
Superpowers.
Up in the sky, it's a bird.
It's a plane.
Gentlemen, we can rebuild him. We have the technology. It's alive!
Real life.
Superpowers.
Great. So, Marc, what are you up to these days?
What am I up to? Well, that's an open question. I have I'm juggling three main things, I guess. I own a personal branding agency called LoudMouse, and we work with a lot of speakers, authors, and coaches to help them kind of define and communicate their message, grow their audience, and make a bigger impact in the world. And then, and I'm a speaker and author myself, and so I'm working on a book and getting out there and speaking. That's how we met at Inbound, speaking at Inbound. And then I also have an online program that teaches personal branding that where I'm helping folks that want to build a powerful brand. But they don't want to jump all in with an agency. They're do-it-yourselfers, and so they're able to, kind of go at their own pace and build a solid personal brand for themselves.
And how can people find that course?
So if you go to marcensign.com, marcensign.com, you can find it on there. That's my primary website.
Tell me about in branding. I heard something really interesting in the last while. That the major change in the last 5 years in branding is instead of looking for how people can see a message, now there's enough reach for everybody, and it's actually how to be highlighted or how to communicate likability as opposed to just saying hi, nice to meet you for a brand. Like the way you're branding is not a certain message, I didn't know that there was this type of Coca-Cola, and now it's just, we don't care about the types of Coca-Cola. Do we like the brand at all? So it's like acting as the brand as a person.
Yeah. So our focus is speakers, authors, coaches, entrepreneurs, and those types. However, it's my belief that everybody should have at least some face of the company, like the big, even for a big company, for that reason alone. We don't care about the product as much as we care about how it makes us feel. And the kind of the fast track to getting somebody to feel something is to connect on a human level. And that, that's why, people use celebrity endorsements. That's why influencers are able to make an impact with a company, is because it's just a lot easier for us to grow attached to another human being than it is for us to grow attached to a hamburger or a pair of sneakers or, something along those lines. A pair of sneakers is just a product. You could put it on, you walk around the block. Yeah, okay, these are fine. They feel good. But when you're, talking about Michael Jordan, or you're talking about, somebody that you have, even though it's one-sided, you have like a history with. I've been watching him since I was a little kid, and I remember when the Bulls won. You have like a history with the product all of a sudden when when there's a person involved.
How do you manage that though? I'm thinking there's a lot of ego. Like when you're doing a sneaker, there's like a creative to that. But when you're doing like a Michael Jordan, right? Everything is like personal messaging. I'm sensitive. It's like him, right? How do you manage the sensitivity?
So personal branding from from the agency side, when I'm working with a client, it's exhausting. It really is. Like if I was working on a pair of sneakers, and I owned a marketing company for 15 years before I started, got into personal branding. But if you would send me the product, I would wear the sneakers for a couple of days. I'd look at them. I'd talk about the color. I'd talk about the feel. Find some funky way to get to talk about it or create some messaging around it. And it was very static. It was very just something clever based on what I'm looking at. With a person, you really have to dig in deep because there's so many layers to the onion. There's and unless you're you have to be able to tap into that thing inside. Otherwise, it's just not going to feel very authentic, when you're talking about somebody. So one of the things that we'll do is like, I'll fly out to my client, when we first start working together, and we'll spend 2 or 3 days together. I move into their house. We spend every waking moment together for 2 or 3 days, because that's really how you're going to get to know somebody. And if I'm going to market you as a human being, I have to know you. And I have to know you for inside now. I got to know what you like and what you don't like, what pisses you off. A lot of times during those meetings, we'll start, it'll start to get a little heated because I'm digging in a little too deep, or, I get to look at the look on your face when the mother-in-law calls and you're, you're annoyed. It's all that stuff is what makes the person. And
it's very vulnerable for people to let you do that.
Exactly. And it's uncomfortable and it's vulnerable. And there are parts of it that I don't, that is uncomfortable for me too. I'm moving into your house, and you got kids and animals, and
you always do that.
If they're dead set against it, I won't. And I'll get a hotel and we'll just spend the days together. And, I try to, make sure we're hanging till 8 o'clock, 9 o'clock at night. I like to, let's go out to dinner, bring your friends, bring your clients. Because otherwise, when you're talking about personal branding, if I just have you fill out a Google form and I talk to you for a half hour, that's not enough for me to get into the stuff that really, really matters, the stuff that people really connect with. Because people want to see the scars. They want to hear the story. They want to see, that's great that you're at this level, but how did you get there? And people want to hear that because they want to know that it's possible for them too. And we protect those stories. We protect those scars. And so to get down into the meat of it, you have to beat somebody down. You got to live with them. And, nobody knows you better than your spouse. Well, I'm going to be your spouse for a couple of days. That's how you have to kind of approach it.
Wow. I've never heard of this approach. It's so unique. And I'm wondering, do you work with companies or just one person? How does that go? Because if it's either a big company or a startup, then I'm sure that, Renan was mentioning ego in a way, there's going to be a few people that might want to be the front. And then sometimes also you're the one who's going to have to decide who it's going to be. And then sometimes also people don't want to be the front, but they want their startup to succeed. Is that a price that they have to pay, that they have to be at the front? How does that all sort of sum up?
Yeah. So we do work with companies. However, we work with people within the companies. So, and this can happen in one of a couple ways. We're not going to brand your company. I'm not really looking to brand your company. I did that for 15 years. It's not exciting to me, but I want to make sure that your CEO or whoever the forward-facing person of the company is, I want to make sure that they have a really strong brand because they're representing the company. They're the one that's on the news. They're the ones being written about. They're the ones doing the interviews. And it's not always the CEO, but it usually is CEO, COO, some higher up within the company. So there's that. And then there's also, I'll sit and speak to or do workshops with entire teams, especially sales teams, especially customer service teams, especially marketing teams, in order to help them build their personality within the company. Because these are people that are touching the other users. So let's say somebody calls customer service. If you can create an environment where that customer service rep or that information person or the person answering the phones or whoever it is able to build a connection with the person calling, you're just going to have a much better experience all around. And so I'll help with that, like helping them build kind of mini brands within that brand.
What would be what would be the natural KPI end game for someone like that? Because I'm thinking a shoe wants to sell its revenue, right?
Sure.
There's a fine line. I'm not meaning this in a bad way, but there's a fine line between ego, I want myself in the front, then value that the company's getting off of that. And I'm wondering what the KPI is to measure that.
So the interesting thing with branding is that branding is a process. It's not a deliverable, right? It's not all right, great. We created the brand. We're done. Coke has been out for a bazillion years and they are still, I think they spend somewhere around $1 billion a year, maybe a little more on branding. So it's a constant process to build the brand. Now, as far as, levels of success, ultimately that turns into sales. It turns into positive reviews. It turns into, Depending on who you are and what you do, media impressions, it turns into more speaking gigs. If you're a speaker, turns into selling more books because people have heard about you. You have a bigger audience. You have a wider reach. So there are those, like a lot of those benefits, bigger audiences, higher paid, speaking gigs, higher paid consulting gigs. It does show up like in that way. Now, it's not a matter of somebody's going to say, okay, look, your brand scores at 80%, so now we're going to pay you more. It's not that. It's that your phone is just ringing more, so now you get to charge more. Or you put your book out and you have enough people that already like what you do and know who you are, and you're not starting at the very ground level. You're at another level that you put your book out and it instantly sells, a bunch more. One of the examples that I used during my talk at Inbound is J.K. Rowling, who wrote the Harry Potter series. She released a book in a completely different genre under a pseudonym. So she wanted to basically start over and pretend like she was a nobody and write a book and go through that process again. And just experience it again, and without all the hype and hoopla that comes with being J.K. Rowling. And so she put this book out, and it took 40 or 50 letters to publishers before somebody finally signed her. The others are kicking themselves, and so the book comes out over a month or so. It sells 1,500 copies, which is not terrible, I guess, like for a first-time author. But then word got out that it was J.K. Rowling, and within a short amount of time right after that, once word got out, it sold 1.5 million copies. Now she never put her name on the book. It's still the same book, same words, same characters, same beginning, same ending. The only thing that was different was the perception of who wrote it. And not only did she sell 1.5 million copies versus 1,500, but it also went from a 3-star review to a 4-star review. So like we liked the book better, and a lot more of us bought it. And it was solely because once we found out who wrote it, it changed everything. That is 100% return on investment for your brand. And now it turned it into a TV series or something like that on Showtime. Like she's got 6 books out, and she still writes under this other guy's name, but it just shows you how powerful your brand can be.
So I'm wondering this, like a lot of our listeners are entrepreneurs, and how does a startup or just like even a one-man show get their name out there?
The first step in every case is be clear about who you are and who you're communicating with. Most people skip over that. They have a pretty good idea. Like I kind of know what I do. And, and then they start on, but let me post on social media. Let me buy Facebook ads. Let me, update my LinkedIn profile, and let me get interviewed on podcasts, and let me do all this stuff. But meanwhile, they're still like a little iffy on how to, what I do, how do I do it that's different, that's unique from others in my industry, and who am I going to do this for? Who are the people that are, stuck awake at night worrying about this problem that I'm going to fix? And if you're not crystal clear about that, it doesn't matter what you do on Facebook. You're always going to you might have some success, but it's going to be, you're not going to reach the level that you really want to. You can get interviewed, you can write the book, you can be a speaker, but if you're not really clear, if you can't just, shout it from the tallest mountain about who you are and what you do, and, with your head held high and your chest puffed out, you're always going to struggle at least a little bit.
So how do you become clear about that?
I move into your house. No. Right. You have to really dig in deep. So it starts with asking yourself like a lot of questions. There's no set formula but there are exercises that you can do. And a lot of this I talk about in the course. And the name of the course is Chosen Personal Branding. And it's about it's really kind of like not trying to figure out, well, how can I package up this thing so other people will buy it, but really dig in deep about, hey, this is what's really important to me. I want to make an impact. This is how I'm going to do it. These are the people that I love, and I want to help, and I want to be there for, and I want to serve, and I want to, and I want to stand up for, and this is the thing that's keeping them awake at night. You have to be able to answer those questions. And that's kind of where it starts. Now you have to keep digging deeper, and you have to keep asking yourself, to get a little deeper than, I want to help these people because they have a lot of money. Like that's not gonna work. People are gonna see right through that. But if you can really grab onto who they are in a way where they feel like you're really, there for the right reasons, you'll start to build that community.
What was your, like, out of all the branding campaigns that you did for personas, what was your like favorite campaign, let's say, or a creative idea to bring someone to that level?
So this was kind of an interesting idea. I had a client that really wanted to be featured in a specific magazine. And so what we did was we got and it took a long time. It took 6 months or something like that, 6-8 months to get an article on the online version of the magazine. And so I was like, okay, so now we got to start. We got our foot in the door. However, like that's not enough. So what we did was we spent a bunch of money, not a ton, probably around $2,000, something like that, $1,500, in paid ads to drive traffic to that article, not to his website, not to his post on Facebook for that website. Like we drove traffic to that article, to pump up their stats and to get everybody all excited about this article. And after about a month of that, or a month and a half of that, they called and they're like, we have no idea what's going on, but people are loving that article. All right. So we would love to have you come in and write for the magazine. So we're like, all right. So now we wrote an article for the magazine, and we did a very similar thing because it was, again, it was on the online version of this. We did the same tool, worked the first time. Let's try it again. We did that again. And that turned into, we would love to interview you for the magazine. And so as a result, we ended up getting, we got these 2 articles and then an interview in that magazine over the course of a year by buying ads to really kind of pump up those stats. And the message was so powerful that it just was a great fit. It was just trying to get them to notice him, which was really kind of the key in that whole thing.
So I'm curious, back to, or maybe not back because it's like right in correlation to what we're saying, but I think they're like a theme of understanding yourself and adding value as part of some formula of staying out there for the long run. And that's sort of making me think, and I wonder what you think about this, what I would call a trend of all these Instagram influencers. Like, where do you see them in about 5 years? Is that because, people are sort of striving to be an Instagram influencer. And to be fair, they're making a lot of money. But do you think
some are, yeah.
Yeah, okay. But you have to connect it to Airbnb so you can come live with everybody at the same time.
Yeah, I'm going to get an endorsement with Airbnb. So it depends. The influencers that are really working it, that really do love their audience and really do connect with their audience and build a connection with their audience, do much better than those that are just building or just creating numbers in order to have something showy and then try to sell something to them. There was a story that came out a couple months ago of I don't remember the exact numbers, but it was a woman that was an influencer. She had something like 2.5 million followers on Instagram, and she started a clothing line to sell to those people. And she ended up having to cancel it because there was a minimum of something like 36 items that needed to be sold in order for the production company to go into production, and she wasn't able to sell 36. So when you have 2.5 million people and you can't sell 36, or somewhere, whatever that number was, it was a very, very small number considering you have 2.5 million people. If you can't sell 36 some odd products to 2.5 million people. Now, it doesn't necessarily mean that they're fake users or anything else. It's just that they're not really sold on you. They're not in love with you. They're not, they're not paying attention. They're not voting with their dollars, whatever you want to call it, as opposed to I would choose 1,000 raving fans over 2.5 million people that are half listening any single day. With 1,000 raving fans, you can make a really solid living. You can, you have people that that will tell their friends about you. They'll buy the CD when it comes out, or they'll buy the t-shirt when it comes out. They'll come to the speaking gigs. They'll buy the books. They will stand you up. And, I think it's more about that engagement and attention moving forward than it is about the numbers of how many likes. And you're starting to see all the social media platforms starting to remove all those stats because they're so meaningless now. Like, they really just genuinely don't matter.
Which also, by the way, like sort of side note, but I'm trying to think like those social platforms that are removing all those likes. I mean, this is based on dopamine and on people returning to see how many likes they're getting. So I'm sort of wondering what's going to happen with the traffic to those websites once that's gone. Like, I'm sure they have some sort of plan in mind, but I don't see where that's going.
They're going to go back strategically to the poke.
Yeah, right.
They're going to utilize that.
Poke to death. But like, seriously, I don't understand. Like, I'm sure this isn't, I do not believe this is just them being benevolent and thinking we're doing harm to people in the society. Let's remove it and we'll be fine.
No, so there's all the strategy about stars and Instagram, like real influencers, I guess, non-influencers. Like, they're trying to differentiate between like the ones that are, that's kind of the mission, isn't it?
Yeah, I think they're doing that because there's so much fake stuff out there, and from a selfish perspective for the platform, it raises the question of credibility. And so in their mind, it's just like, you know what, like, let's take this off the table completely, and let's see where it goes. Now, they're still going to collect that information. Don't think for a second that they're just removing that field in the database. Like, they are still going to collect that information. They're still going to make decisions on that. They're still going to push posts. But the thing that they found is that there's a certain number of likes that once people see that it has a certain number of likes, they just instantly hit the like button just to join that crowd. So like, all of a sudden you see a post with 100 likes on it, and then all of a sudden, like, it's hard to get to 100, but it's easy to get from 100 to 500 because everybody wants to be part of the group. And so we start liking things just because everybody else likes them. And so it's not because we actually like it.
Isn't that like natural nature?
Yeah, of course.
We're sheepish.
We have a need to belong. And so, and that shows up on social media. It shows up in our, everyday life, it shows up in the restaurants we go to. I can't tell you how many times I've looked at reviews on a restaurant and said, well, like, look, like, this one has, 5 stars, but it's empty. The one next door has 4 stars and it's just packed. We should go to the one that's packed.
Right.
And like, that's what we do. Like, cause we like, there must be something, if nobody else likes this, there must be something wrong with it. And we move on.
So now, like, with social media, you're going to enter like with your eyes closed and just, taste the food. That's a bit like advanced.
You're actually going to have to like things.
Yeah.
And it'll be a much more honest result because, like, people will actually like things because they like things, not because the crowd likes things. And I think it's going to make life a little more difficult for influencers. It's going to force them to have to prove their value because that's the other thing. Like, if I pay you to do like a sponsored post for me, and you post it and it gets 10,000 likes on Instagram or whatever, you get to point to that. Like, I don't know if that helped me at all. Like, I don't know if you bought those 10,000 likes. I don't know if they're legitimate like customers for me. Like, but your job, to you, it's a job well done. When you remove that from the equation, now all of a sudden as an influencer, like, I really have to be able to prove my value. Like, I have to be able to say, like, look, because I posted this, sponsored post, it turned into this many phone calls or these kinds of sales. Like, it forces influencers to be marketers.
Yeah, a lot of influencers are going to be looking for a job soon.
I probably like it's a big deal. Like, I think it is a big deal. It's going to make a big difference.
I agree.
And it's just going to change it. And what's going to happen is new people are going to come out from this and they're going to find another, another path to something cool. And then, then a bunch of them will show up and ruin that too.
As Gary Vee says, marketers ruin everything.
That's right.
A lot of entrepreneurs that are really successful, like yourself, they come from 2 genres. Either they came from like a sport background or a music background. It's not total, but a lot of them. And like, first of all, how'd you do that? Like, the move from there to there, and like, how did that help you? if at all? Fair enough.
Yeah, so I have a background in music. I went to Berkeley College of Music in Boston, Massachusetts, and graduated with a degree in music performance. And then I moved in with my mom because I was an unemployed musician. But I had this dream of wanting to work on Broadway. It was 1996, 97, something like that, around the time. And so I wanted to work on Broadway. And there was really no Facebook or Google, or the internet was like basically chat rooms, and it was almost useless. And so I would go into the city every day, and I'd try to, I'd collect the playbills from the shows and the programs, and I try to meet all the musicians, and I was really good at networking myself and getting in front of people. I created a logo for myself, and I created I used a specific font. I got headshots done, and I used certain colors for every time that I sent them something, so people would always know it was me. And like, this is before personal branding existed or whatever. In most of I don't want to pretend for a second that I've invented this thing. Like, it was mostly because I was unemployed and I lived with my mom. So I'm drawing logos and and I'm seeing well, this is what the big companies are doing, so I should do the same thing. And so I started doing that. So now I have I'm clear about who I am, and I've created this this look for myself, and still people wanted very little to do with me. I was completely unqualified for the job. I had no experience. I had just gotten out of school. I had no connections short of stalking people, which is really what I was doing, and it was incredibly creepy. I had nothing. And so I then started positioning myself as an authority, and I reached out to Bass Player magazine, which was the big bass magazine at the time. I'm a bass player. And I said, hey, look, I'm friends with all these people on Broadway. How about I write an article about what it's like to be on Broadway? And they loved the idea of it, so they gave me $350, and I wrote this article. But now I was able to call everybody, and I had something to give them, but I was also an authority in the bass industry, where hey, I'm writing an article about what it's like to be on Broadway, and I want to my terms were, you had to give me an hour interview, you had to give me a copy of the music for your show, you had to introduce me to every musician in your show, and you had to let me watch your show from the pit. And if you wouldn't do any of those, then you were off the list. And so so it gave me a chance to really meet everybody and to get a copy of the music so I could practice. And eventually, the article came out, and I was a big hero. One of the guys I really connected with, and ends up that I ended up writing some more articles about his dad, who was also a bass player. But it was that combination of being clear of who I am and having a clear visual brand, and then also being an authority that allowed me to, that got me this gig. Like, any one of those was missing, and I wouldn't have gotten it. It wouldn't have happened. And so I ended up, playing in the show Rent for maybe 10 years, on Broadway, on tour, national, international tours, and all that kind of stuff. How I made the transition was I was really good at marketing. I found I had it just came very natural to me, just like music came very natural to me. And so I said, well, I should help other people. So I started a company to help musicians and artists market themselves in 2000, I think it was. And the internet was, I was just starting to build websites, and I didn't realize how broke musicians and artists were, and how seldom they paid their bills. And so one day, my work had gotten out, and somebody from Nike reached out. I think it was Nike or American Express, some huge company. Oh, it was American Express. And they reached out, and they said, we have this small project for you. And I did the project, and I doubled my invoice, and I sent it to him. And the guy called me the next day. He's like, I can't submit this invoice because, and I figured I got caught for double charging him. And he's like, it's going to cost us more to cut the invoice than it is for the amount. You should at least double or triple what you sent us. So I was like, stop, really? And so sure enough, and so that's how I kind of got my start. I saw this as a way to get out of doing wedding band gigs.
How did American Express hear about you? How did they approach you?
Because I was doing mostly artists and musicians, my work was really creative. And so you got to remember, this is 2000, 2001, something like that. So websites were very boxy and very, HTML tables. And I figured out, I was just designing stuff that was just really cool and very fluid, And I figured it out as I went along. I didn't, I kind of didn't know what I was doing half the time. And looking back, I should be a little horrified of like the code that I was creating and stuff. Like I was hacking.
But are you tech savvy? Are you like?
Yeah, I pick up stuff like that really easily. My mom was a computer programmer, and so she was taking me to adult night classes for computer programming since I was 6 or something. I had an Apple II Plus. I got this awful picture of me with an orange trucker hat sitting in front of an Apple II Plus programming. So, like with buck teeth and braces and all this. So I was very good at picking that stuff up, and I was able to, develop these websites that were pretty creative. And it just kind of, like there weren't a ton of people doing it at the time. And, now of course everybody's a web designer, and you can get, your websites for free or whatever. But back then it was just different. And I just had a different way of solving the problem that they seemed to connect with. And once I got American Express, that turned into Nike, which turned into Berkshire Hathaway, which turned into like all these other big companies. And then I realized how much I hate working for companies like that.
The next evolution.
Yeah. And so it took me 10 years or 12 years, something like that. But then I eventually realized that, the world doesn't need somebody to sell an extra can of Pepsi. I want to make an impact in the world, and working for these big companies, I wasn't doing it. So I exited that company and decided I wanted to work with people.
But you're saying that as if it was like, yeah, I woke up, I had breakfast, I exited that company, next.
No, it was ugly and scary and all that other kind of stuff. And I don't want to cry. So I'm
no, let's cry. Like, what went through your head? Like, tell me about the minute when you realized you don't want to do this anymore.
I remember I was out for a walk, and I was, thinking about what, looking back on the last 10 or 12 years, and it was a year before I actually left. And I was thinking it was coming up on New Year's, and I was deciding what the next year, what my goals were. And I found that every single one of my goals had nothing to do with the company. It was all about how I can get away from the company. Like, what, maybe I'll write a book and I'll become a New York Times bestseller. So this way I can not work for this company anymore. So I could shut the company down. And it was every goal I had was like to get away from it. And I was like, okay, so clearly my number one goal has to be to leave. And I left, and I realized that it wasn't that I didn't love what I did. I didn't love who I did it for. I didn't like working with big companies. I was just another cog in the wheel. And they paid well and all this other kind of stuff. But at the end of the day, I could come home from work, put my head on the pillow, and know that I made absolutely no difference in anybody's life. And that was a tough pill to swallow. Like, that was really hard because, at the end of the day, like, we want, like, as people, we want to know that we made a difference, that we've done something that can be remembered, and that can, maybe we're not going to be the next Steve Jobs, but damn, like, shouldn't we at least try? Like, shouldn't we at least try to do something that's going to, make sure that this planet spins on a different axis because we're here?
Why do you have that drive? Not like you're saying as if all people have that drive. Not all people have that drive.
I think everybody has a drive to want to leave some kind of impact. Now, it doesn't mean change the world could mean, changing your family, it could mean changing your community, it could be changing the world on this grand level. Like it doesn't have to be this grand thing. Sometimes it's just doing one small thing that matters in somebody else's life. Like, you don't have to walk across the country in a pair of flip-flops for a good cause in order to change the world. Like, you can do something locally or whatever. And so I, as a kid, I always had this, I was the kid that up until I was probably 10 or 11 years old, it's probably like more like 15, but I don't want to admit it. I had snaps on all my pajamas where my mom would sew snaps on all my pajamas for a cape. And so I would have every pair of pajamas I had a cape. And it didn't matter. Like, it'd be Mickey Mouse pajamas and, and I'd have a cape for them. And so I spent my childhood jumping from the ottoman to the couch to the lazy boy recliner, saving the world. And then as a musician, I spent, the better part of 10 years of my life ending every night with a standing ovation, at the end of the show, having people, and knowing that, like, I've created something, I did something that changed the lives of those people in that audience for a short amount of time. And so when I realized that, like, wow, I've created a company that does the complete opposite, that doesn't do any of that, like, that was a punch in the face to me.
Yeah, you got no standing ovation.
Yeah, like it just didn't matter. Like I got home and it was I'd walk in the door and nobody was standing clapping for what I did. Like
Were you still living with your mom then?
no, 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 no.
Okay,
I
so
was
you've done
no,
it.
but like I come home to my wife and I didn't get any kind of say. I was just like, yeah, okay, you went to work and you can't like that's what you do. And I'm like, oh, well, I don't like the sound of that. I wanted to. I just I just had an inherent need for that for people to to know to know that I did something that mattered.
So who did you sell the company to?
I had a business partner, so I just exited.
Oh, like to him?
Yeah.
Awesome.
Yeah, so it was easy because agencies are tough to sell, so that would have been a nightmare. This was easier.
You would have to work there for 7 years.
Yeah.
Yeah, I know exactly, and I didn't want to do that. And just to to be incredibly transparent, to know just to give you the this is why I was curled up in a ball. It was so important to me that we had this disagreement between buying me out. And we couldn't get past it. And it was so important to me to move on that I resigned from my own company. So I didn't sell. I didn't walk away with anything. I literally, woke up one morning. I said, I'm done. I can't do it anymore. Here's my resignation. Just take 100% of the company. Now there was value there. I could have sold it. I could have, we could have negotiated for the next 6 months or whatever. It was just more important for me to move on. That's what made it so scary because I woke up one morning, I wrote a letter, I sent an email, and now I don't have a job and I don't have a company and I don't know what to do.
Wow.
And that's when I was just like, okay, I guess we're gonna figure this out right now.
Yeah, burn the ship.
Exactly.
You're probably better as an entrepreneur in an uncomfortable spot than a comfortable one.
I think so. Looking back is the best thing I ever did. At the time, I'd probably fight a little bit on that because it didn't feel like it. But then things happen the way they're supposed to happen. So I had this idea for what if I just, do this thing that I do, but do it for different people. And that's where LoudMouse came in. I came up with the name LoudMouse on a vacation. My wife and I went for a weekend trip and I was like, by Monday, I need to have a name. And she agreed because she was going to kill me because I was, going over this for a month. And it was just really important to me to come up with the right name. And so I came up with the name LoudMouse. I looked, the domain was taken. I reached out to the guy that owned it who wasn't using it. I said, hey, look, I really want to buy the domain name. Would you sell it to me? And so he called a couple days later. He's like, look, I just want to let you know that people have tried to buy this domain name off me for years. I had this idea for a product. I never did it. But people have offered me, as much as $10,000 for this domain name, loudmouse.com. And so I was like, well, you're not getting $10,000 out of me. So I'll do loudmousemedia.com or something like that. Thank you anyway. No worries. Don't worry about it. He goes, well, hold on a second. In your email, you had a link to your blog, and I went to your blog, and he read a post that I had written about my neighbor, and who is this extraordinary guy, very giving, and just a wonderful human being. And so he's like, I was so touched by that story that I want to be able to give back to you. So I'd like you to have the domain name. So I was like, well, I'm not paying you $10,000 for it. What can you do? What's the best you can do? He's like, no, you don't understand. I'm going to give it to you right now. And so I was like, wow, okay, sure, whatever, crazy.
Cue from the universe that you're doing something.
Yeah,
right.
I'm thinking the guy's a lunatic, and there's no way he's going to do this. So he goes, get in front of your computer right now. Go, open GoDaddy, give me your account number, and within 10 minutes, the domain was in my account, and we got off the phone. I was shocked, and then he called back an hour later, and I figured it was like buyer's remorse, and he wanted it back, and so he's like, I totally forgot. I also have the .net. And I should give you that as well.
Wow.
And so he gave me loudmouse.net too. And so and that's right when I started this company. That was like the day that I started this company. So I started this company on the foundation of, there is a guy named Lance in California who we've become friends over the years, that believed in me more than I believed in myself, because I was not willing to spend $10,000, but he was willing to give up $10,000.
Nice.
And that's a harsh reality where it's just like, wow, so I have to make this work, and I have to do good, and I have to be able to give this back and somehow create something to make up for the fact that I didn't believe in myself as much as this other guy did.
Yeah, but you also did, because he did go for it.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Well, that's one of those things that drives, every time I get a little tired or get a little beat up, I think about that. I'm like, man, he gave me he could have gotten 10 grand for this domain name. He said no. And he gave it to me for free. doesn't make me pay for it like in other ways. Like it's not like he's reaching out going, hey, I need a website. I'm going to need you to step up and do this. Like, nope. And we've talked a bunch of times, at least once or twice a year. We'll talk to each other. It's just interesting.
Yeah, it's like I think it's a bit serendipity. Sort of
Yeah,
thing.
it's just a cool foundation to have where it's just like, okay, I know I'm on the right path. I know somebody, like I just need to believe in myself like this guy believes in me.
But I still argue that you did because you left everything and you went for this. But I think this was like some sort of cue from whatever, just to show you that you're on the right path.
Right. Yeah.
So like we want to be respectful of your time. I know that we only have a few minutes left. I wanted to ask you like the obvious real life superpowers question. Like, what's your superpower?
I think it's connecting with people through stories. Being able to tell a story, being able to connect with somebody, being able to dig in, find their story, and just connect with people on that human level. Whether it's on social media or branding or like it's why I think what I do is so important, and I love it so much, is because it allows me to just play matchmaker, get people to fall in love with each other, figure out how do I get other human beings to like that human being, and so I think that's a really convoluted way of saying to answer the question. I don't know if you got the right response out of that, but
I get it. No, I get it. And I also think that you practice what you preach, because like listening to you, I think that the process that you do with your customers is what you did with yourself. And you sort of, you drilled down and asked yourself what value you're bringing and all the other questions that you sort of try to understand and unpack with your customers in order to bring them to the front and make them the best versions of themselves. And I think you asked yourself that series of questions and got answers that you did not like from yourself, and through that made your own path. And it's sort of meta because now you're doing it with other people. I think it's pretty big, and I think it's very brave to listen to your heart and to just leave everything and go and do it. And it paid off, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Like I said, it's the best decision I ever made. Or one of the best, I guess. I have kids and a wife, so that's probably a terrible thing to say. Like,
no,
it's one of the best, right?
Saved. You just saved the podcast in your life, man.
It's in the top 5 or top 10, something like that. Got to factor in the dog and stuff too, because
got to factor in the dog.
Anything before we finish? Is there anything else you have to factor before? Because this is going to save your life right now.
Let's just say top 50, just in case there is
infinity. And then, so your kryptonite.
My kryptonite, figuring out what your superpower is so deep and so much more difficult. No, figuring out what's wrong with you, easy.
Yeah, we always need like a list from people.
Yeah, I'm a perfectionist. So I am now that could be positive sometimes because I'm very meticulous, and especially with my clients and whatnot. But I probably have 2 books that I've written that are sitting in a file on Google Drive that has never seen the light of day because I just it's not perfect. So I've gotten stopped by perfectionism a couple times.
Wow. Well, it's not too late.
Oh yeah. I'm constantly working on that side of it.
Got to do the book. If I would ask you, if you put the hat of your consultant on, if you advise writing a book, I think I know what the answer is.
Yeah, of course.
If you want to strategically leak it.
That's right. It's a good idea.
Yeah, we can just erase that part of the interview.
Yeah,
and then,
nice.
Wow, so thank you so much for this. Is there anything else that you want to add to our listeners?
No, I think hopefully they got some value out of this, and
I know we did.
If not, it's all your fault, not mine.
I agree. It always is. And Monet would say it's my fault specifically, but fine, yeah, I know.
So true.
Right.
All right, because it's never the bass player's fault. It's always the
No, it's not.
There
it has
we go.
to be the drummer.
There we go. Oh, I'm like Ringo. Awesome. Thank you so much for this.
Oh, it's my pleasure, guys. We'll talk soon.
Okay, bye for now.
Bye.
Real life.
Superpowers.
Up in the sky, it's a bird. It's a plane. Gentlemen, we can rebuild him. We have the technology. It's alive!
Real life.
Superpowers.